Hey guys, how's it going and welcome back. We got an Imac score. This is a late 2015 iMac 1.6 gigahertz dual core. Of course it does have 4 threads and it overclocks to 2.7 gigahertz. I like to call this the Mac Air in a computer format. I had the 2020 Air, as a lot of you know, and I didn't have it for very long, and I took it back because, yeah, it was just thermal throttling like crazy, and really it's a useless computer except maybe for email and a few other things that are light-duty tasks. But eventually I will get a M1 machine, and it's likely going to be an iMac anyway. But I picked this up on Marketplace on a trade deal, actually. Guy was in the mood for trading or cash, and I'm broke, so trading works. So I traded a couple pellet pistols for it, and I think we got a pretty good value between the two of us, you know, either way, and we're both happy, so hey, that's all that matters, right? So this has 8 gigabytes of RAM in it and a 1 terabyte hard drive, which is a 5400 RPM 2.5-inch platform. So basically it's a laptop hard drive sitting in this thing. I mean, I think Apple could have probably pushed it to a 7200 RPM drive, which would be bigger, but then on the other side of the fence, it wouldn't be as power friendly. Smaller drive, of course, being 5400 RPM and laptop size, actually uses far less voltage. Problem is, it's also a lot slower, like a lot slower. So you're talking about what, 2000, basically about 2100 RPM almost. So it is a big difference either way. So, 7200 well, 7200 minus 54, so yeah, either way, you're talking a lot slower hard drive. So booting time is going to be a lot slower than a same type of machine with, you know, a 7200 RPM drive, right? But an SSD would certainly help this thing get a lot zippier, because loading time can be a little sluggy with Big Sur, which is what's on here, and it's actually 11.5 Big Sur, which is the most current version of it. 8 gigabytes of RAM is just barely enough for Big Sur, but it does work. And of course, the 1 terabyte, lots of storage. The screen size, fantastic. It's a very comfortable size screen, although I do still prefer my 27-inch much better, and of course a lot faster. But this thing, it has a purpose. And it is set up almost identical, except for a few other programs I got to put into it to make it exactly identical for software to my larger iMac. And that's kind of the way I want to have it set up. I've got all kind of methods to my madness as always, but you know. Anyhow, my impressions of this computer. Now, this is not the 4K display either. It's 1920 by 1080, so it's not 4K. But that's fine, it's not a big deal. And you can hook up external displays, and you have your usual USB ports out the back, card reader, etc., etc. Built-in camera, of course, which is your QuickTime stuff for doing your video, or whatever program you want to use for recording video with. Microphones on any iMac-based computer, or even the laptops, they always suck anyway, so we don't even really care about mics at this point, because Apple does a lousy job with microphones. Other than for speech purposes, they're great, but for if you want to sit here and sing and play guitar or sing and play another instrument, don't bother, because it's going to sound horrible. Although the picture will be beautiful, the audio will suck. So get an audio interface and or maybe even a mixing board to go along with it and do your whole thing like I do in here in the studio. So anyways, GarageBand works fantastic with it, so I'm quite happy there, even though it's a slower machine. Does work rather well. Let's go into the main specs though. I want to talk about this. So we have a turbo boost to 2.7 gigahertz, which is just fine and dandy. 8 gigabytes of RAM, maximum is 16. Now they've made this so that it is not upgradable. So if you want it with 16 gigs of RAM, either hopefully your Apple store that you go to that sells Apple has a 16 gig model in stock, because that's what I would recommend. Or you would have to custom order from Apple. Okay, now the 2015s can still be bought brand new or as refurbished units currently at Best Buy, and they are still charging an arm and a leg for them. Why? Because they're really not depreciating too much yet, because of the simple fact that they can run Big Sur and the next operating system that's coming. They'll be able to run just fine, which is helping them to retain a little bit of value, but they're still losing either way. Whether it's a refurbished, a new, or a used one, they're still losing a lot of money regardless, because of the M1 processors being out now. All the Macs are taking a hit. And even lower end Macs that cannot run Big Sur, those have taken a serious dump, or at least they better be, because Apple people need to wake up and realize that their stuff ain't worth that much money anymore. Now that all the newest, greatest tech is out, your values have depreciated so severe it's pathetic. But hey, you know what? Apple fanboys, they think that their stuff doesn't stink and that it still holds value just because of the Apple name. And you got to stop relying on that Apple name. Now, I am a licensed certified Apple technician, have been since 1990, and I know my stuff when it comes to Macs, as well as PCs. I'm also PC certified, and PCs depreciate even faster than Macs do, no matter what PC it is. When you walk out the door, you just lost 50% at least. You know, at least with a Mac, when you walk out the door, you've lost about 1%. But, you know, in comparison, you don't lose much walking out the door. But because this is a 2015 model and it's now 2021 in the reality world here, I mean, you're talking still about a 6-year-old machine going on 7 years old that is, you know, even though it can run the next OS coming soon, it's still a dinosaur in comparison to the M1 processor machines. You know, but it's still very usable. Don't get me wrong here. I mean, I'm going to smash it, but I'm also going to give you the good points too at the same time, right? It's very versatile. It can do and perform a lot of your tasks. Yes, it can do video editing. It's not going to do it as fast as a faster Mac, but we're talking a 1.6 gigahertz dual core. You know, to me, this is a kind of class of machine that really properly suits surfing the internet. It's fantastic. GarageBand works reasonably well, though I probably would not want to use this version of GarageBand with this OS for trying to do a professional recording, especially when it's something that's processor and RAM intensive, because we don't have enough RAM in this thing. We only have 8 gigs, okay? And we don't have enough processor to utilize this version of GarageBand in the same way we would be able to under, say, Catalina, which this machine would be smoking fast and be able to be more than adequate to do all that stuff. So some things are going to be a little bit sluggier, a little bit more dicier, depending on how you do things and the software you choose to run. Now, there are other DAWs out there you can use that may be, of course, a little bit better than GarageBand as far as not being able to, they don't chew up as much resources or processor or RAM, so might be a little bit more suitable, just a little bit more what you're not used to. And I personally prefer GarageBand over anything out there, okay? But to each their own. So we do have integrated graphics with its own memory. We have 1.5 gigs of video RAM in this, which is actually quite good, and quite good for playing a lot of games. And as far as games go, I've loaded in games in here, like I've got Motorbike, Island Racer, RC Air Sim. I have Zen Pinball, Aliens Grip TD 3D, Halloween 3D, Pathways into Darkness, and I still have more to put in yet because I haven't finished completely fully setting this thing up. But let me give you a prime example of slow for booting. Motorbike. Now that's one click, which is fine. Some things may take a couple more clicks. Some programs will load a little bit slower than others. It kind of depends. You know, if I was to do a versus video, which I probably will anyways, just for giggles, even though it's not fair, I might do one against my 27-inch, and we'll see how things go. But this is sort of what we're going to expect to see with Big Sur with 8 gigs of RAM. This program should normally have been loaded by now, but because we have a little bit slower processor, that's how things work, a little bit slower. But once it's up and running, it's fantastic. And I broke my neck. So it runs fine. You know, I have no qualms with it. Once the program is running, it's like it lets loose and it's good. So it's not a big, huge thing there. GarageBand, let's fire that up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10th one, and it's ready to go. Now it's going to be a little bit of a delay here. And empty project. Now it doesn't even matter that I have a browser running in the background. My browser's not chewing up much. So let's quit the program. And let's restart. 2 bounces. Loads much faster. And voila. There we go. So don't run any programs in the background, and you shouldn't have technically any problems with GarageBand, but if you do, then it's because of Big Sur, and that's a pretty big program, especially once you've downloaded all the possible stuff for GarageBand, which I have already done that. So we have 100 gigabit Ethernet built in, so if you want to run Ethernet, or we have Wi-Fi, of course, which I'm running on Wi-Fi. I don't like having cables everywhere. We have an SD card reader, which can use a regular SD or an SD that is like an adapter to use the micro SDs. So you still an SD card that goes in. Apple Magic Mouse. This is the version 2 rechargeable, as well as the version 2 rechargeable keyboard as well. I totally detest Apple keyboards and mice. I think, number one, they're way overpriced. Two, I've never had a liking to them, other than the extended keyboards were nice, but I'm just not a real fan of them. I prefer different keyboards and mice. That's just me. And I prefer having more than just, you know, this. Now this can click on, you know, left or right click, but I don't like the fact that you got the swiping sideways and up and down. That kind of annoys me, especially the sideways swipe, because you could accidentally just move your hand along the mouse with my hand flat on it, and you know it's going to do stuff. So you got to be prepared for that when you're running this kind of a mouse. So, but it's just my preference. You know, I mean, some people love the Apple keyboards and Apple mice. I'm not a fan, but I'm going to keep this keyboard and mouse on this computer only because of space constraints that I have. I figured, well, for what I'm using this computer for, I can live with this mouse and keyboard. I'm fine. It's not a big deal. Dual mirroring, 3440 by 2160. Regular display mode, by the way, is 1920 by 1080. 5400 RPM. There's that little 2.5-inch hard drive that's sluggy. You know, you can also, this model has a serial ATA 6 gigabit per second connector for 2.5-inch hard drive if configured with a Fusion drive or SSD at the initial time system of purchase. Now, we all know you can open up these Macs yourself. There are toolkits that come with stuff, and you can buy special toolkits to properly open the displays. Although sometimes you may run into a hiccup, like I did once on my 27-inch iMac. I went to upgrade the SSD in it, and for some reason there was an extra piece of monitor tape or something that was holding the display. And that little bit of flex that happened was just enough to go and crack my display, which I've never replaced because I'm not spending $900 on a flipping display. And besides, I don't really see the crack when the computer's running, so I don't care. This computer, I probably am not going to crack it open. We'll have to see how the next new OS update goes. If it's too sluggy, then I'll crack it open and throw an SSD in. Okay, now it also has a PCI connector for PCIe 2.0 times 4 NVMe Express interface. But this connector is not present if the system is only configured with a hard drive at the time of purchase. I'm kind of wondering about that myself, because I do have an NVMe slot in my late 2015 iMac 27-inch, from what I understand anyways, but it's just a nightmare to get to it, as it was on the 2013, which is why I never took it apart in little bits and pieces just to put an NVMe drive in there. However, you can actually just use an SSD, which is just fine. I mean, whatever. Moving along, we have serial ATA at 6 gigabits per second. Standard wireless is 802.11ac, standard Bluetooth 4.0, 4 3.0 USB ports, no FireWire ports. It's like, what? That sucks! We do have some Thunderbolt ports on the back though. SDHC card reader, Magic Mouse 2, battery we don't worry about. We can run Windows 10 64-bit on this computer. And the minimum OS is 10.11. Maximum operating system is currently at current, which right now is Big Sur, okay, 11.5. And we are going to be able to use the new OS coming out, as well, which is good. So it's keeping some value here to the computer to a certain point, but at the other side of the fence, it is a slow machine. So I probably am not going to enjoy the experience of the next new OS with only 8 gigs of RAM, which is not upgradable. Now, as far as, are there any third-party programs to run Mac OS 9 Classic applications on Intel Macs? So the answer to that would be none. But we do have Windows support, so we can actually do that. Now, the original current price of the computer, brand spanking new, in late 2015 when it came out, was $1099, or call it $1,100 US. Estimated current retail is between $500 to $700 US. Now, of course, this also depends upon condition of the computer, whether or not you're getting the original keyboard and mouse with it, the condition of those, that sort of thing. I mean, condition really speaks a lot, okay, when it comes to value. However, I still think that every Mac.com's website is ludicrous for their values, because since the release of the M1s, everybody's flogging off their Intel computers, but they're also trying to get as much money as they can out of them, which is ridiculous, because they're really not worth as much when you can buy higher horsepower for far less money now, right? It's kind of like the MacBook Air 2020, the Intel one I had. This is $1,300. Well, the new M1 MacBook Air, which is literally 75 times faster, and just so much more, okay, is $1,300. So the price must drop on the MacBook Air 2020. And I've seen people trying to dump, 2020 MacBook Airs and still trying to get all their money back, minus the taxes. And it's like, no, I'll give you $300 because, you know what, I'd rather spend the extra $1,000, and spend the whole $1,300 and get an M1 if that's the case. Because the older Macs are now losing value. And especially when you're looking at, anything that's below 2019 is definitely going to take a big dump. And should be taking a big dump in price, okay? Because you only have so many operating systems left. And here's the other big thing that's going to take the serious dump on the Intel machines, and that means all Intel-based Macs. And that's that Apple is going to be cutting off support for Intel-based Mac computers in probably about another 1.5 to 2 years, from what I was told. And once that happens, you think things are getting cheaper now? These things are going to go boom and really bottom fast. Right now, they're still holding some value only because you can run Big Sur right now. You can run the next OS, providing you have at least, I believe it's a 2014 iMac and newer. I have too late 2015, so I'm fine for the next OS. So it's still helping to retain some value to them, but nowhere near what they're claiming at everymac.com in my business, because I've seen a lot of these exact machines for sale all over the place for as little as $200, $300 in perfect pristine condition, just like this one. So there are some people out there that realize that, hey, you know what, the M1s are out, I'm not going to be able to get as much for this thing as I hoped I would. So yeah, I'm just going to dump it and be done with it, because they know the value is not there, and they know support is ending within 2 years, and once that happens, they're not even going to get $25 now for their computer, because it's not going to be actually worth it, So, and a computer is only as usable as much as the company is actually supporting it for operating system and updates. Anyway, so that's the main spec lines on that, and a little bit of Apple news for you at the same time. So what do I think of this thing? I think it's a little sluggy in the boot because of this very slow laptop hard drive that's in there. I think an SSD would be better. I don't like the fact that I cannot even max out the RAM in this thing to 16 gigs. That sucks. Because my 27-inch is a late 2015 and I can upgrade the RAM myself. Not a big deal. And I've done that already once. I'm actually from 8 gigs, I went to 24 gigs. But this one I can't. And it's like, they're both in the same year. Why would Apple not allow us to upgrade the flipping RAM? Like, come on, seriously, let's max this baby out. Because 16 gigs of RAM or higher is fantastic with Big Sur, you know, because it just frees up that much more for programs to be able to run. Even if you're stuck running them one at a time on a slower processor machine like this, you're still going to be doing a really smoking good job if you have more than 8 gigs of RAM, because Big Sur sucks a lot of it. Anyways, there you go. So where am I at? Well, for the value price kind of thing, well, I don't think they're worth anywhere near what everymac.com seems to think they're worth. And I think as far as the trade deal goes that I did, I mean, I traded about $450 worth of pellet guns and accessories to go with them. So I think that was an even swap for me. So technically, I guess you could say I paid basically $450 for this thing, you know, because of what I had into the guns and the extras I gave the guy. So I think it was a fair deal for both of us, definitely. And I'm quite happy, and I'm very aesthetically happy that there's not even a blemmer of fly anywhere on the thing, and that everything is working absolutely beautiful. Even the battery runtime and the keyboard and mouse are doing extremely well. So I'm quite happy there too. For my intended purpose for this computer, it's going to work fantastic, so I definitely give it some very good kudos there. I don't mind the fact that it takes a little bit longer to launch an application the first time, because at least the second and third and fourth and so on, it's going to load even faster. And as long as I'm only running one program at a time, I should technically not have any problems with GarageBand, but I still have some further testing to do with that to see how things go. So I will do an update review on this thing down the road. So for now, we're going to score this thing at an easy, solid, I would say 4 out of 5. But as far as what they're physically and realistically worth as far as dollar value, in my opinion, I would say between $200 to about $400 tops Canadian dollars. You know, depending on the condition and so on and so on. And depending whether or not you're picking up an 8 gig or a 16 gig model too. I'm basing mine on an 8 gig model. A 16 gig model, I'd throw an extra an extra $100 value on there. So an extra $100. So, because 16 gigs is definitely way more doable. So, but either way, where does this thing class for people though? It's great for email. Great for surfing, does a fantastic job. The wireless works really good. I'm very impressed. You know, I like the screen size. The main resolution is fine. It's 1920 by 1080. So that's your standard HD format size. I don't have any problems with the display at all. I mean, even though this is not the 4K model, it's a beautiful display. Very beautiful. So excellent color palette and everything. But yeah, I think you should technically be able to use it for GarageBand. Probably better to do it under Catalina than Big Sur, but we'll see what happens with Big Sur. Because I know I've done it with Catalina and everything's been never a hiccup. I've used Big Sur with my 27-inch iMac, which is like 500 times more powerful than this. And of course I have hiccup free. On Big Sur with that, with GarageBand. So I have some testing to do on that, but otherwise you should be okay. Just don't have any other programs at all going. I mean nothing. Okay? Give the ability for the computer to only have to work with one program at a time, and I don't think you should have any issues, but like I said, I have further testing to do. FaceTime, it'll work great for that. How well things go on the internet depends on the speed of your connection coming to your house. You know, that's the thing with the internet. It depends on your package you're paying for, what type of internet you have, how well it surfs and does stuff, you know. But for me, for what I'm doing in my system, my situation, works really good, so I'm fine. That's about all I can really say. So I say a 4 out of 5 is where we're at on this thing. For now, let's do further testing first, though. Playing games has been fine. I haven't had any issues or fart issues or anything, so that's been great. I have some other games I have yet to install that I want to do some testing on and see how they do. It's definitely going to be fine for running my Katana Mark II amplifier for the Boss Tone Studio, Boss Tone Studio for the GT1000, or any of the other Boss Tone Studio things. Yeah, it's going to work fantastic for you, so I wouldn't be a bit concerned there with that stuff anyhow. They're not demanding programs for that. But anyways, that's what I got for you guys, so I think it was a good trade deal overall. I'm quite happy with it, either way. And time will tell, and of course, once we do get that new Mac OS update, I'm going to try it and see how barfy 8 gigs RAM is going to be like on it, and if I'm going to have to even put an SSD in this. I'm kind of hoping not to have to upgrade the hard drive, because I'm kind of fine with for what I use it for. I shouldn't need it. But SSDs do make things really run so much better and faster and smoother. Especially when your programs are running too. They seem to run so much faster and smoother on an SSD drive. Anyway, that's it. That's all. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed the video. Any questions? You know, comments below, guys. Put your questions down below, and I'll do the best I can to answer them for you. See you on the next one.